Ready, set, go.
It's time to buy, sell, trade, or whatever.
These guys turn music into a spectacle.
Online starts now.
It really puts the groovy in my smoothie.
On 98.7 KVOK. AM 560.
Little drama.
Hotline, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Darren Byler here with the Wild Alaskan. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
Am I on hotline or am I on hold?
Hold on. Let me check. You're on. What's going on?
Hey, am I on the air?
You are.
Hey, just wanted to just up here listening to your show today.
Right.
I happen to be in town for the day, and you're talking about government waste and Coast Guard wasting money on that $2 million duplex.
That nobody's talking about.
I am. I know firsthand about the Coast Guard government waste.
Right.
And I think it's time for the people to know what happened to me in my so-called poop trial. Do you realize that a federal agent by the name of Aaron Woods got an open check to spend close to $1 million to put me in prison for a poop charge?
Right.
This includes a $22,000 C-130 Hercules transport to my arraignment in Anchorage. When I told the agent, listen, if you get an indictment on me, I will happily fly myself to Anchorage at my own expense and not the taxpayer's expense.
Sure.
But no, that wasn't good enough. This guy in his ego wanted to put me in leg irons and chains, waist chains, wrist chains, and he took me to Anchorage in chains on a C-130 transport flight, and this was just for me.
Right.
There was 4 flight crew, 2 federal agents, and me. And this whole thing was just a ridiculous waste of taxpayers' money for a so-called poop charge. And
are there any other charges that have stemmed from this, or is it illegal dumping of waste in the harbor?
Well, what they did is they got me on this illegal waste of dumping. And by the way, this isn't a real environmental crime. There wasn't a trace of poop found.
Right.
This was all speculation.
Sure.
And what they did is they set me up on a logbook, a Blackwater log that by law I didn't even need.
Right.
And they threatened me that if I didn't produce the log, that they would shut me down once again. You remember the first shutdown? That was another phony shutdown, illegal shutdown that nothing ever became of it. But so then they charged me with a 1001 felony violation for lying to the government. People in Kodiak need to know, especially professional mariners, that when you fill out a logbook, that if the government wants to shut you down for any reason, they can go through that logbook, and if they find any discrepancies, they can charge you with a felony punishable by 5 years of imprisonment for that logbook. And then you get to go to federal trial and argue over the accuracy of that logbook, and that's what they did to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing is completely stinks, and the only reason I'm on the radio telling the citizens of Kodiak and what's going on is because, I live a really quiet lifestyle in West Kodiak with my family.
Right.
And I just happened to come into town on business 2 days ago.
Sure.
Sure enough, I'm on the front page of the Kodiak Mirror all over again. Darren Byler, his sentencing has been postponed.
Sure.
And then they get to reopen the wound. He's been convicted for crimes against humanity. And,
can't believe that's not a bumper sticker.
Yeah, we get it, people. We get it. And by the way, if the Coast Guard was really concerned about environmental crimes such as the Clean Water Act, they would do something about the city of Kodiak, which is in violation of the Clean Water Act. And here's something that people don't realize on what's going on this fake poop charge. This is the biggest hypocritical point I'd like to make.
Mm-hmm.
The Marpool Treaty is associated with the Clean Water Act. Okay, I wasn't even charged with the Clean Water Act. I was charged with the Refuge Act, which is the wrong charge to begin with.
Right.
The EPA mandates the fact that every state and port in this country has to have black water pump-off facilities. Now, Lawn White, are you listening to this, pal? You're in violation of the Clean Water Act. There hasn't been a pump-off facility in Kodiak that has worked in the last 20 years. Okay, so they're in violation of the Marpool Treaty and the Clean Water Act. Now, the EPA by law, and people who are listening to this needs to take note. You can look this up. The EPA requires the U.S. Coast Guard to enforce the Marpool Treaty and the Clean Water Act. So guess what? the city of Kodiak, the hypocrites that they are, told the Coast Guard that they didn't think that I had a holding tank on board above 300 gallons, and I was more than likely dumping in the channel, which wasn't true. I had a 3,500-gallon tank, and all the waste was going into that tank. But the hypocritical part of the story is the city of Kodiak has been allowing commercial fishing boats for the last 20 years to dump straight in their harbor. And I'd like to have one person in this town tell me that's not true. And instead of enforcing the Marpool Treaty and fining the city of Kodiak millions of dollars, Coast Guard agents such as Aaron Woods looks the other direction, because that's not politically correct to take on the city of Kodiak with the millions of gallons of human waste that have been going into both harbors for the last 20 years. He wants to take on the Wild Alaskan because it's an entertainment venue. And let's go back to the environmental harms here. The city sponsors a sea lion rookery in the Dog Bay Harbor. Do you realize how many hundreds of thousands of gallons of sea lion poop go into the water each year? But that seems to be okay. Nobody's worried about that. And all the other boats that anchor up in the channel every year with their valves wide open going straight into the channel. So what I'm trying to say here is, before people get too critical of thinking that I've polluted the environment with so-called black water pollutants, that's not true. Not a single trace was found, and they convicted me. But here's one last point. Let's put this whole nonsense of a environmental crime into perspective here. Let's look at real environmental crimes, such as oil spills. Now, this is what environmental crimes are really on the books for: oil spills and chemical spills.
Right.
Now, let's take the Exxon oil spill that completely polluted the entire Prince William Sound, North Kodiak Island, killed hundreds of thousands of marine life, animals, mammals. The person responsible for that spill, Captain Hazelwood, got 6 months probation. Let's talk about the largest oil spill in U.S. history in the Gulf of Mexico by BP Oil Company. The people responsible for 11 deaths on an oil rig and the largest oil spill in U.S. history, they got 6 months probation. Let's look at the most recent oil spill in Alaska, where Noble Drilling, connected with Shell Oil, got caught in the Arctic dumping oily bilge water in the pristine waters of the Arctic Ocean, and then lying 11 times on an oil log.
But okay. We can. There's thousands of examples, and I have a finite amount of time. The Earth is rotating rapidly on its axis, Darren. But let's go back to this. So I'm with you on some of this, and I think a lot of it is witch hunt stuff. And I've been saying it for a long time, and I think a lot of folks in town have. They don't want a strip club in Kodiak, and they just don't. That's just a fact. And if you open it up legit, you can open up a strip club. The Mecca does it, for God's sake. So it happens. People don't like it. And if they turn to a strip club, they would be fighting and picketing all the time out front. But the Mecca brings in male strip reviews all the time. So I don't see anybody picketing out there. But you got caught up in this. Now, I'm a firm believer in that you get your day in court. So now you got your day in court. What the hell happened?
Well, here's what the hell happened. This whole case was designed around the notion that I didn't have pumps on board to be able to transfer sewage.
Okay.
And that's just not true.
But that's easy to prove that you had them. So they said you didn't, and then you were convicted because they proved you didn't?
They completely lied and came into court and said I did not have pumps on board.
But what about you showing the pictures, and here's my boat, I have pumps on board?
That's just the problem. The photos were never allowed in the trial. But let me tell you exactly what happened.
I mean, did you not get a good lawyer?
No, I had a public defender.
Okay.
That was my problem.
Right. Well, I get what happened. I understand that part, but I've listened to the folks around town going, "We finally got rid of that," and I'm like, "Oh, come on!" If you're a capitalist and you truly are a capitalist, and that's what you want, then this guy over here, Darren Byler, is supplying. If no one wanted to go to the strip club, your business model wouldn't have worked.
Right.
So clearly, there is a demand for what you were providing. And that's just good American green money across the counter. That's the way it goes. If they don't like that, then they should teach their children something else, I guess. But how many Coast Guard came out to your spot out there?
Oh, I had a large amount of Coast Guard patrons. In fact, the interesting part was when I got on the C-130 flight, 3 out of the 4 flight crew were some of my best customers of the season.
Sure.
The funny part is that Aaron Woods is videoing this with his secret little GoPro camera, and he goes, "Don't talk. You're on video. Don't." And I said, "Well, these guys are some of my best customers." He goes, "I knew you would say that."
Well, sure, but don't. Now, let me ask you this. Now, so I moved up here from Las Vegas, and I know that everything is on video. Everything.
Right.
That's where the city I moved from. There's nowhere you can move without being recorded. So let me ask you this: did you have recording devices on that boat?
Recording devices.
Yeah, were you recording the patrons coming on board and leaving?
We had security cameras, yes.
Okay, so you have the tapes of all the people that were on board?
I wouldn't be willing to say that on the air. Why?
I'm just saying, you've got, obviously, these are your patrons. You can say, who is my customers? Look, these are your regular folks. These are the people that came and saw me. These are your friends and neighbors. Get over it. Maybe you'll have more people come to your defense.
Well, what's interesting is Kodiak Harbor Master Lon White was out there as a customer, and he actually testified against me in court that he thought that I was illegally dumping because the so-called dry pipe theory at Pier 2, the pipe was dry. This was where this whole thing started. He told, and I listened to all the audio tapes in Discovery where he told Coast Guard officials that he didn't think that I was dumping legally because the pipe was dry. And in reality, there was a 2-inch pipe, and I put an 1.5-inch hose inside the 2-inch pipe, and that's why it was dry. So close to $1 million was spent on this farce because there was no communication. I mean, all they would have had to do is say, "Hey, Darren, we think you got a 300-gallon tank. How are you reporting you're pumping off 800 gallons every 2 weeks if you only have a 300-gallon tank?" I would have said, "Okay, City of Kodiak Harbor Master and U.S. Coast Guard officials, why don't you come out to my boat and I'll show you my 3,500-gallon tank." But instead, they sneak around. They do this big investigation for hundreds of thousands of dollars. They do their obscene boat raid with 25 federal agents that flew up here from all over the country. And guess what they found in the boat raid? They found the 3,500-gallon tank that was plumbed from the new bar head into the tank. But yet they told the grand jury that it didn't exist. They lied to a grand jury to get an indictment.
So where's the boat now?
The boat's at my property in West Kodiak.
Really? Because I think it's up. I think you put it up for sale, and someone could start another stripper boat, no problem. It obviously worked.
Well, that's just the problem. See, they want to make an example out of me because it was such a great idea that there was other people in this state, entrepreneurs like myself, that thought, it might be fun to use this business model in other ports like Ketchikan, Dutch Harbor. But you're talking about the people that are proud of themselves for shutting me down. Now, you're in this country, you're either a patriot or a pinhead, okay? And patriots believe in civil liberties. And just because you don't agree with what somebody else is doing, just because it might be against your religious beliefs or your moral beliefs, you're a pinhead if you want to strip the civil liberties of your fellow citizens.
Sure.
That just doesn't make sense to me. That's what our country was founded on, is civil liberties. And when you have a legal business come in and you use the assets of the U.S. government, the state of Alaska, and then local cities, governments, to crush someone, you people involved in this are pinheads. You're not patriots. You're not.
Well, and we're gonna have to cut it. We've been on for a while now, but Darren, what happens is you've proved. So you're the MySpace of social media. You've come out and done it first, and then it didn't work so well for MySpace. But someone's going to open a strip club in Kodiak. Why? Because we know it works. We know it works. Thanks for calling, Darren. I appreciate that, and good luck. And I hope you don't spend the rest of your life in the clink for dumping poop in the water.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I'll win this in appeal.
All right.
Just wait.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, here's about 275 gallons black water a minute, looks like, going through this thing. More like the pea water from the bar. And there's my pump. It had since last April. Pumping out of the salt water, of course. Because if we were really pumping the black water tank, it would be pumping down there. And of course the government has my other bladder, so I couldn't even do a test. There's nowhere to put the black water, so we're doing a test pumping the salt water.